What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so want to go ahead and do another installment of this updated top 10 small forwards list, top 10 small forwards of all time. And just to do a brief recap, at number 10, I had James Worthy. At number 9, Scottie Pippen. Number 8, Dominique Wilkins. Number 7, Rick Barry. Number 6, Elgin Baylor. Number 5, Kevin Durant. Number 4, John Hondo Havlicek. And at number 3, I have Julius Erving, the doctor. And I think the top 3 guys that are on this list each have an argument for being the greatest small forward the game has ever seen. With Julius Erving, it's when you look at certain undeniable factors. When you combine his ABA career with his NBA career, when you do that, the numbers and the accolades become unbelievable. 1983 NBA champion, and that was one of the, not just any championship year, that was one of the greatest championship runs we've ever seen. That team won 65 games during the regular season. They went 12-1 during the playoffs. And remember that back then, I think that was the last year that there was only, 3 rounds of the playoffs, I believe, back then. I think 3. But anyway, 2-time ABA champion, 2-time ABA playoffs MVP, NBA Most Valuable Player Award 1981, 3-time ABA MVP, 11-time NBA All-Star, 5-time ABA All-Star, 2-time NBA All-Star Game MVP, 5-time All-NBA First Team, 2-time All-NBA Second Team, 4-time All-ABA First Team, All-ABA Second Team 1972. He was on the ABA All-Defensive First Team 1976, ABA All-Rookie First Team 1972, 3-time ABA Scoring Champion, ABA Slam Dunk Champion. He won the J. Walter Kennedy Citizenship Award in 1983. His number 32 is retired by the Brooklyn Nets, as well as his number 6 retired by the Philadelphia 76ers. He's on the ABA All-Time Team, and he's on the NBA Anniversary Team, the 35th, 50th, and 75th. And when you look at his career scoring averages, 24.2 points per game, 8.5 rebounds per game, 4.2 assists per contest. And, when you look at his overall accomplishments, he is the 8th highest scorer in ABA NBA history combined. Well, he's the 8th highest scorer in ABA NBA history combined with 30,026 points. And when you look at the influence that he had over the game as far as changing it to a more above the rim game, where dunking was once frowned upon, it became a crowd-pleasing aspect of the game. Julius Erving had more influence upon that than any other player in the history of the game. So when you look at what he did as far as influence, right, as far as the play for several generations until Steph Curry changed it, to his impact, yes, he does have, no matter what the fuck some of these people on YouTube say, he does have an argument for being the greatest small forward ever, still to this day. Even if you think his game is unskilled because he didn't have a great jump shot. Well, you know what? It didn't matter during his era, because when he played, there was no 3-point shot for much of his career, and when there was a 3-point shot, it wasn't as of much importance. It was all about taking it to the rack, and shooting the mid-range back then. Now, was he the greatest mid-range jump shooter ever? Absolutely not. but he shot 50.6% from the floor for his career. You know, and even if he wasn't a great 3-point shooter, he still wound up shooting 29.8% from beyond the arc. You know, which, considering the era that he played in, that wasn't bad. A 78% career free throw shooter. I think he did okay. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't a great knockdown shooter, but, you know, the man was very, very, accomplished basketball player. And he's one of the great in-game dunkers, too, I should say. Not everybody can dunk like that in a game. Like in a contest, you know, that's one thing. But to pull off some of those dunks in the game is a whole other matter. Julius Erving went to college and played college ball at the University of Massachusetts. And the combination of the fact that there was a rule at the time that players in college could not dunk the basketball, which really hindered his game. And he didn't like where he was playing, the city, the culture. He was not a happy camper at this time. Now, there was rules against players leaving college early to apply for the NBA draft at that time. You had to wait 4 years. Either you had to play 4 years or you had to wait 4 years. But the ABA had a hardship exception where, I think, if I'm not mistaken, if your family was in financial difficulty, you could opt out of college early and play pro for them. He took advantage of that loophole and signed a $500,000 contract with the Virginia Squires. And he was a superstar from the get-go, averaging 27 points per game his rookie year. Now, prior to his second year, there was more legal issues because I think the Bucks had selected him in the NBA draft, and they wanted his rights. They were trying to force him to play there. I think ultimately he was traded from the Bucks, his rights, to the Hawks, but he wound up, and I think he even wound up playing for the Hawks as far as preseason is concerned, showing up for training camp, playing for them preseason. I think initially they ruled that the NBA did have his rights, but then ultimately a higher court ruled that no, he should be playing in the NBA. The Virginia Squires have his rights. So then, adios NBA, back to the ABA. And during his second year in the ABA, he averaged a career best 31.9 points per game, going on with over 12 rebounds, over 4 assists, 2.5 steals, 1.8 blocks per contest. And as a matter of fact, during his years in the ABA, he was the Michael Jordan of the ABA. He averaged 28.7 points, 12.1 rebounds, 4.8 assists, 2.4 steals, 2 blocks, 50.4% shooting from the floor, 32.2% shooting from three-point range the few times that he shot it, and 77.8% from the line. So this was a superstar player who won 2 ABA championships and 3 consecutive MVP awards, and left the ABA as a champion. Now afterwards, after the ABA folded, the next question would be, where would the doctor play? And ultimately, that destiny would choose to be the Philadelphia 76ers. All right? The state of the NBA at that time was terrible. Let's be honest, it was terrible. Um, it wasn't that there was no talent. That's the misconception. There was a plethora of talent in the NBA. The problem was there wasn't that Madison Avenue type star, that transcending star that could bring in fans from all ages, all races, all creeds. They lacked that. They had a lot of stars, but they didn't have that transcendent star, the stars like they had back in the 60s and 70s with Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain, Jerry West, Oscar Robertson. They had stars, but not stars. And Julius Erving was the closest thing to that. Think about this. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was a star, but he wasn't Madison Avenue. The prickly personality, the political and social causes, he turned off people like that, But Dr. J was the closest thing they had to that. He was. And even though Magic and Michael and Larry get all of the credit, Julius Erving was the one that kept the NBA afloat from the late 70s into the Magic Larry era. He doesn't get enough credit for that. And also, the NBA was becoming more and more African American. All right, that people don't like to say it, but that's the truth. It was turning off white America. They didn't want to. They wanted to see more representation of them or stars that they could relate to. And they had Rick Barry, but Rick Barry was a prickly asshole who even other white people didn't like. So, but anyway, Julius Erving instantly made the Sixers, who were one of the worst teams in the NBA in the early to mid 1970s, into a title contending team. His rookie year in the NBA, they made it to the NBA Finals, 1977, and actually had a 2-0 lead in that series before losing 4 games in a row to the Portland Trailblazers. Now, I believe the coach at that time was Gene Shue. Oftentimes in the past, I misremembered it as being Billy Cunningham, but Gene Shue was the coach. Now, after this, the Sixers would go to the finals again, I believe, in 1980, where they would face the Lakers. Now, this time, people really thought that they had the advantage because, look, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar gets hurt in Game 5. I think the Lakers came back to win that game, but and the Lakers are up 3-2. But the next 2 games, Kareem is not going to play, and I believe Game 6 was at Philly. So people just pretty much assumed Philly was going to win Game 6, and Game 7 without Kareem, who knows? Ultimately, we know what Magic did in Game 6, and the Doctors' quest for an NBA championship was stymied yet again. 1981 Eastern Conference Finals. I believe they were up 3-1 against the Boston Celtics. 3-1. And Boston came back to win that series 4-3. Another devastating blow to the Doctor. This during his MVP year in the NBA. 1982, the Sixers go to the finals again, only to lose to the Lakers. And by this time, Dr. J was 32 years old. He was no longer, he was still a player close to his prime, but his prime years and his opportunities to win championships were running out. So, the Sixers make a trade. The Sixers make a trade that made them, at that time, and maybe still to this day, the most dominant regular season team in the history of the NBA. They acquired Moses Malone, who at that time was a 2-time MVP. Ultimately, he won his 3rd MVP in 82-83. And that year, they went 65-17, and this was going up against a star-studded NBA. And they went 12-1 in the playoffs. At that time, there was one fewer round in the playoffs playoffs compared to today. But they romped through the playoffs, and ultimately they swept the Lakers in the finals. And Dr. J won that elusive NBA championship. And at this time, you thought, well, maybe the Sixers could maybe have a dynasty on their hands, right? You know, look, they won a championship. Maybe they can win some more. But ultimately, time was just not on their side. By 1983-84, injuries and some signs of age were starting to hit the Sixers. They still finished 56-26, but injuries were posing a problem, and ultimately they were shocked in the first round when they were upsetted by the New Jersey Nets. They were beaten in the first round by the New Jersey Nets, of all people. And, you know, then afterwards, you start having issues with Andrew Toney and his feet. Other teams in the Eastern Conference were rising. The Celtics had firmly established themselves as the best team in the East. But then you had teams like the Atlanta Hawks. The Bulls were starting to rise. The Pistons were rising. And slowly, even though they had acquired Charles Barkley in '84, slowly the Sixers began to fall down. But Dr. J still was a fan favorite. I mean, he was the ambassador of the NBA. He was the elder statesman of the NBA. He was class personified. And when he retired prior to the 86-87 season, even though that he played that year, that was going to be his last year, every arena he went to, they was sellouts, cheering him, and people did not really want to see him retire. But even at that age, with gray hair, he still showed flashes of his athletic ability and his athletic self. And ultimately, he went out. I think the last game he played, it was a playoff game against the Milwaukee Bucks. And he retired after 86-87. But this is one of the greatest players the game has ever seen. To me, Julius Erving, if you're looking at NBA careers, should at least be in your top 30, top 25. If you combine the ABA and NBA, I think personally he should probably be close to your top 10, if not even higher than that. He was the greatest player in the history of the ABA. You could argue Gilmore was the most dominant as far as numbers, but he was the Michael Jordan of the ABA. So I just want to do a tribute to Julius Erving. In my opinion, the third greatest small forward, but he has a case for being the greatest small forward the game has ever seen.